You got to define what you want to say yes to and work from there and move at a rate of speed, because effective speed is way better than chaotic speed. And the difference between effective speed and chaotic speed is the plan. Having a well-defined plan for what you're shooting for, and just make the necessary adjustments throughout the period of time to ensure you arrive at your destination.
Welcome to the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast, the ultimate destination for accredited investors and entrepreneurs seeking alternative wealth-building strategies. Discover how to fast-track your journey to wealth and time freedom by thinking outside the box. If you're ready to join the ranks of the Contrarian Capitalists and learn the most effective ways to reach your financial goals faster, you're in the right place. Let's get started with today's episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast.
Thank you for joining another episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast. I'm your host and your favorite silverback, Sylvania Harrod. And on today's episode, I want to talk to you guys about one of my favorite topics, which is speed. So through the week, I have numerous conversations with people that are looking to exit the 9-to-5, as well as in my business, talking to those that are looking to scale their real estate efforts and what they're doing. And I'm here to tell you that I found one simple ingredient that it makes the difference between those that achieve large amounts of assets they're able to acquire versus those that don't. And it comes down to one variable. It's speed. Now, I've been taught through life that speed can kill, because if you think about racing on a motorcycle, well, there's only so much speed that tires can handle when you go into a turn. But if you have calculated speed, you can understand exactly how to bend into the curves and how to actually you lean the bike the opposite way if you're going, to make sure that as you go through that curve, you have the opportunity to bounce out of it. Now, thinking about that, how do you learn those things? It's typically through training and through practice. So every day in life, what I do is I have certain elements that I'm practicing because I know what my 10-year goal is. I know exactly what it looks like in 5 years, 3 months. But here's the thing I'm going to tell you. No matter what I think it's going to look like, it's not going to look like that anyway. So once I understood that space, it made the other variables much easier in life of realizing that no matter what you're doing, you're going to mess it up anyway. Nothing is going to look like what you think it's going to look like in 3 years. Let's just look at some facts, right? So if you're listening to this, think about yourself when you were 20 years old. Did you think that where you are at in life was anything like what you thought it was going to be when you were 20? The answer is probably no. There was different ups and downs and journeys that you had to go through in order to get yourself to this place in life. And whatever you think it's going to look like, it's not going to look like anyway. The mind likes us to be at a place where it thinks we can control the future, but you can't. That is called the variable of time, of life, God, universe, whatever language you want to use. You cannot control that. What I can do is I can increase probability of a particular outcome. Let me give you an example. I was chatting with a friend this week, and he said that I don't know why I keep struggling with the things that are happening in life. I said, well, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm struggling financially. And I have been pretty much most of my life. And he goes back to a moment that was 12, 13 years ago. Well, the reality is, what have you been doing on a daily basis? Because you can think all the things you want to. You can read all the things, go to all the personal development events, go to all the jump around and tell yourself affirmations. But here's the reality. When you measure what you've done, that is the true determination of what the probability of success is going to be like for you. Because sometimes you brought a hockey stick to a baseball game, and you can swing the hockey stick as much as you want to, but you're not really going to get the desired results because you have to be willing to change the efforts of what you're doing. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're listening to it and you're like, I believe I've taken the right actions, do not confuse movement with effectiveness. Because I know plenty of people that do lots of activities. You look at their calendar and you're like, damn, You're one of the busiest people I know. But you got to ask yourself, are the actions you're taking effective or ineffective? So like in the situation for this friend, I evaluate what they're doing. And I go, honestly, you're literally training yourself to be disappointed because you're waiting for this magical rainbow unicorn to hit you. It's like the same people that hope for the lottery. They play the lottery every week. And I just maybe one moment I hit the lottery. All my whole life is going to change. Guys, I'm here to tell you, do not sit there waiting for magical unicorns to land in your lap. The probability of that happening is less than 1%. And sometimes you get lightning in the bottle. Lightning in the bottle is when, like, that moment happened. There are certain people who play sports and they win the championship their first year they play. That's not a norm. That's just, sometimes that happens. You can't control what's going to happen. I mean, you can look at a person like Lil Nas X. They didn't have any record deal, didn't have anything. He goes ahead and his song becomes the biggest song in the world. All he did was just like upload it and you just hit lightning in the bottle. The real thing is he going to be around in 20 years? Can he sustain that level of excellence? Is he going to be there? There's a reason why we have this category called one-hit wonders. Sometimes you hit lightning in the bottle. But waiting and expecting for lightning in the bottle to happen, the probability is very low. That's why when I share with you, speed matters. Because the reality is, let's look at the facts. If I look at things from a base of probability, I know that if I take 10,000 swings, eventually, hopefully by the 9,000th swing, I realize I made 8,999 incorrect swings. So now I can spend the next 1,000 swings doing effective swings. That's why I always tell you there's 3 people you need in your life. You know, the person ahead of you who is already seen and can tell you where to avoid the speed bumps. The second person is the person next to you. That's why I tell you about community. Because the reality is while you're in the driver's seat, sometimes the game changes. The car that you're in is a little bit changing than the one I grew up learning how to drive. You know? But that person next to you is your battle buddy, as we used to refer to it in the Army. It's the individual who they can tell you and you have that conversation. And then the third person is the person behind you who you can help them prevent the different speed bumps that you need in life. Why that's so effective is because if you look at it, the person ahead of you is going to tell you little things that are going to give you insights into wisdom. The person next to you, you have a person who you can relate to, who's going through the desires that you're having in that moment. And if you're teaching somebody that's behind you, you're going to comprehend the information and not just knowing, but actually understanding. So you need those 3 people in your life. When you have that, it affords you the opportunity to start increasing your level of probability. So let's look at an actual plan, right? So in that example of that friend, I had to understand what his financial blueprint was. Because here's the thing. More than likely, if you're looking for home runs, you probably spend like you're looking for home runs. And you get to a place where all of a sudden you start looking at data. I mean, it's the ugly truth. You got to audit yourself and see where things are going. Because the mind will convince you that things are going well because it gets its necessary dopamine hit every time it fantasizes about that home run. It cannot comprehend whether that is a factual event or that is an imaginary event. It cannot comprehend. You still get the same dopamine hit. So if I get the same exact dopamine hit, dreaming of something and visualize something that I would after actually accomplishing something, why would the mind actually need to accomplish it? Here's a fact, it doesn't. Just posting about it and getting enough likes will give you the same dopamine hit as you would as accomplishing it. So in reality, we're actually wired to just dream and not actually do it. This is why you have to understand the kind of car you're driving. The more you understand yourself, the more you have the ability to actually change it. So now knowing that information, now let's look at speed. When I say speed, it's the speed to execute. Because I've been in conversations where I talk to people, and one of the questions I ask them is like, what's your nirvana? What is your ideal scenario? If that ideal scenario were to happen to you today, what would that mean for you? Everybody says the same thing, man, that mean the world. That's exactly what I want. And then I show it to them. and say, okay, this is what you need to do. And I know this is what you need to do because that's what I've done. And they go, okay, great. And this is when the magic happens. Most, I expect to do nothing because the dopamine hit of actually finding the thing that you want to do and realizing it's there is a lot of times a greater experience than the work that's about to come. Because on every side of the thing that you desire, it's typically labeled with a big old box of work. So guess what happens? For most, they talk about it. No matter what, like it doesn't matter about income or education or any of those things. Funny enough, the more educated you are, the more time you're going to wait. And then they wait. Follow up. Hey, I got this. Do you want this? And they go, yeah, I want that. And then months pass by. For some, years pass by. And they do absolutely nothing. While the other individual just was like, all right, cool, I'm going to get started and go figure it out. And then they come back 2-3 months later. Oh, that didn't work, but I want to do this. And they start making activity. And they start moving in motion. Because what they realize is you don't need all of the data that you think you do. What you need to know is what your plan is. And then you have to build a yes box. So yes box, buy box, as is referred to in real estate. You figure out what your buy box is. This is something that if it shows up, you're going to say yes to it. You got to define it, just like buying a house, right? You back into it based upon the things you're going to say no to, which is typically easier. Find all the things you want to say no to when it comes to certain real estate, and then real estate business, anything wealth generating. You got to know what you want to say yes to. And the more you say no to things, the easier it becomes yes. Because what you're doing is you're building a blueprint of what to say yes to. And so for those that have that already predefined or help them structure it, oh my God, I will tell you, things just start showing up. Because remember, as I told you, life is nonlinear. For all of you linear thinkings, I'm here to challenge you until it's nonlinear. Don't believe me? How in the world? I was reading about this lady who lived to 102 years old. She smoked a pack a day and drinks wine every single day. And she's lived for many years, 100 plus years. There's lots of people I've met. The best runners I met when I was in the Army were smokers. I thought smoke's supposed to reduce your lung capacity. World is nonlinear. If you don't believe me, go outside. If you think that in springtime it's supposed to be this type of temperature, just realize that one day it can be 80, the next day it can be 50. This is not linear. It doesn't work that way. We want to try to create a linear world inside of a non-linear situation. You just have an inverse relationship. So once you embrace the non-linearness of life, it actually becomes easier. Because then you realize there's a science of achievement that you can do. And it's balanced by the art of fulfillment. The art piece is up to you. Science is just repeat A, B equals C. That's it. So what I want to help you understand to land the plane on this episode is you have to truly define what your buy box is. And you really only know what your buy box is by identifying what your 3-year North Star is. Because if you're a person that says, hey, I want to make $10,000 in recurring net profit per month in the next 3 years, which helps me cover the cost of what my actual baseline needs are per month. That's why I call it your nuts. What is your nut? What's the number? It doesn't matter what the number is. Just tell me what the number is. And you say 10 grand. 10 grand is my number. All right. Well, we need to build something that's going to afford you the opportunity where you have 10 grand recurring. How much do you have today to invest into it? And you go, I got 50 grand. All right, cool. We need to cycle your money to where you're able to grow that pot to where you need it to be. It's just current state. And I'll tell you, it's non-linear. You'll start. You'll get your first property. It'll make $100 a month. And you're like, damn, I got to do 100 of these is what your mind wants you to think. And for some people, they'll get exhausted. Other people will get excited. All right, how can I get 100 doors? Then you can start applying leverage in different situations and realize that the number is probably easier than what you think it is, but you just need to have a plan and you need to get started. And you cannot get started unless you actually take action. And that's the basis of it. You got to define what you want to say yes to and work from there and move at a rate of speed, because effective speed is way better than chaotic speed. And the difference between effective speed and chaotic speed is the plan, having a well-defined plan. and what you're shooting for, and just make the necessary adjustments throughout the period of time to ensure you arrive at your destination. So I hope you found this episode very valuable. As always, these episodes are inspired through conversations that people have with me. So whether it's comments, if you find this video, or it's people that send me DMs, one of the best ways to DM me is find me on LinkedIn and send me a message there. That's where I get a lot of the information that I use to create these episodes. So as always, stay hungry, stay humble, and stay grateful, my friends. Cheers.